It started with a message. Calm, clinical, and soaked in arrogance. The Galactic Council broadcasted it across known space with no warning, no hesitation, no diplomacy. The transmission showed Earth's envoy, Thomas Grady, standing tall in chains before a panel of smug, condescending aliens who thought themselves gods among insects. He had been Earth's first true representative to the interstellar order. A war veteran turned diplomat, Grady was chosen not for politics, but for honor. He didn't speak like a politician. He spoke like a man who had bled, who had fought, who understood the cost of peace. That's why they hated him. The transmission lasted only 6 minutes. In the final 30 seconds, Grady looked into the camera, his bruised face calm, and said 4 words that would ignite the stars. Tell Earth. Burn them. Then the laser lances fired. His body fell. The Council didn't expect Earth to respond. They thought they'd executed a symbol to remind humanity of its place in the galactic hierarchy, beneath them. A warning, they called it, necessary for galactic stability. But Earth wasn't the Earth of 100 years ago. The United Terran Dominion didn't run on fear. It ran on rage, on loss, on the scars of history. Humanity had clawed its way through its own blood, burned cities, broken empires, and rebuilt every time stronger. They didn't beg. They didn't bend. The president didn't make a speech. No grand announcement, no plea to allies. Just a single command sent to the defense grid. Protocol retribution. General Marcus Wren, commander of Earth's interstellar combat fleet, watched the footage in silence before deleting it from his pad. His face didn't move. His voice didn't shake, but his next words shattered stars. Launch all fleets. No prisoners. No diplomacy. Wipe the Council from the map. No votes. No UN resolutions. Just the sound of warships powering up. In less than 3 hours, every major Terran vessel was on the move. Dreadnoughts, assault carriers, cyber swarm flotillas, all lit up the void. Earth's colonies mobilized without question. Even the Martian separatists dropped their grievances and loaded nukes onto cruisers. The Council still didn't get it. They called Earth primitive. They didn't understand that human rage wasn't wild. It was focused, surgical, and cruel when provoked. At the edge of Council space, Station Delvar reported unknown warp signatures. Within minutes, it was nothing but dust. No demands, no negotiations, just silence, and a blackened hole where a space station used to be. The Council's first official response came 4 days too late. They offered condolences, a public apology, promised investigations into the Envoy's execution. Earth never replied. Because by then, over a dozen Council planets were gone. Not occupied, not conquered, gone. Cities melted from orbit, skies turned to fire. Survivors weren't left behind. Every strike calculated, every target symbolic. Capitals, cultural centers, sanctuaries. The message was clear. You executed a diplomat. So we're executing your existence. In the Council's central chamber, panic bloomed. Species that had once barked commands now pleaded for mercy. But Earth wasn't listening. Earth was busy sending coffins into space, 1 per planet burned. Grady had once said in a closed-door meeting, "They won't understand what a cornered human does until it's too late." He was right, and humanity was just getting started. The shipyards of Ganymede glowed red with overdrive. Men and women worked without sleep, welding armor plates, loading warheads, calibrating hyperdrives. It wasn't just soldiers now. It was the entire Terran civilization, focused like a blade. Every engineer, every pilot, every factory worker, they all moved with a cold, shared purpose. Vengeance. The Council had made their fatal mistake in public, thinking Earth would crumble beneath galactic shame. What they didn't understand What they refused to understand was that humanity had no shame left. The species had already survived its worst days. Genocides, world wars, civil collapse. They didn't flinch at death. They buried it and kept marching. General Marcus Wren stood aboard the TSS Vindicator, Earth's newest orbital dreadnought, staring out over the fleet stretching into the void like a wall of fire. He wasn't a man of many words. His men didn't need speeches. They followed because they knew what he stood for: clarity, justice, and ruthless resolve. The bridge was quiet. Everyone watched him. He turned slowly, the scar down his left cheek catching the dim light. Operation Scorch is active. We move in 27 minutes. Hit hard, hit fast, leave no witness. No one questioned it. Not even the younger officers who still flinched at hearing the words, "No witnesses." This wasn't about tactical victories anymore. This was about memory. Humanity's envoy had been slaughtered, and the only response was annihilation. In the outer rim, the first wave of Earth's assault fleet dropped out of warp into the Draxian cluster, a region once considered too sacred for war. The Draxian people were one of the original signatories of the Council Charter. Their capital floated above twin suns, a gleaming jewel of art and science. It burned within the first hour. Terran warships didn't issue warnings. They didn't bother disabling shields. They broke through with brute force and nuclear fire, stormed the cities with mech divisions, and silenced every signal. On the bridge of the Terran warcruiser Hammerfall, Commander Rorden watched a Draxian elder weep through the comm screen, begging for mercy for their innocent children. Rorden said nothing. He just pressed one button. The screen went dark. Behind him, his XO whispered, "Sir, orbital cannons are charged." "Fire." Another city gone. The Council tried to respond with conventional fleets, massive ships lined with defensive systems, diplomatic protections, and layers of political arrogance. They were designed for show, not survival. Earth's ships weren't elegant. They were monsters. Blunt, efficient, armored like fortresses, and bristling with weapons no alien civilization had ever dared use in open space. Planet crackers, antimatter torpedoes, eye-guided siege drones. At the Battle of Vistara Prime, Earth's fleet broke through the defensive wall in under 4 hours. What followed was a massacre. The Vistarans were known for their peacekeeping missions, their cultural contributions to the Council. Their archives were considered the greatest library in the quadrant. Terran Command vaporized the library first. Let the galaxy remember. Earth had culture, too. They buried it in glass and steel, not words and treaties. Back on Earth, news of the campaign didn't bring protests. It brought silence. Streets in New Berlin, New Chicago, Nairobi, and Luna Prime stood still as the images rolled in. Council planets in flames, flags torn down, aliens kneeling with hands up before being vaporized. There were no tears for them. They killed Grady. Every human knew the weight of that name, not because he was famous, but because he was one of them. A man who volunteered to walk into the lion's den, who represented Earth not with bureaucracy, but with backbone. A soldier turned diplomat, not the other way around. A father, a husband, a man who believed peace could be earned through strength, not submission. And they murdered him on live broadcast. The Council made one last desperate plea, a joint message from 12 species, unified in trembling panic. They begged for ceasefire. They offered reparations. They declared the execution unauthorized, blaming a rogue faction. Convenient. They even offered the return of Grady's remains. Earth's response was swift. A new fleet deployed toward the planet where the execution had occurred, Cavix Theta. the place of Grady's final breath, the place that needed to be wiped from existence. The Sovereign's hand, a Black-class Terran stealth destroyer, arrived in orbit. No signal, no lights, just dark silence. Inside, Captain Darnell sat with his fingers steepled, eyes locked on the surface scan. He was old-school Navy, born on a mining colony, lost his brother in the first orbital rebellion. He didn't believe in mercy, only balance. His orders were clear. Obliterate Cavix Theta without fanfare. No missiles, no drama. He ordered the release of the Novacore virus. The virus wasn't biological, it was data. A hyper-intelligent AI payload that infiltrated every system. Power grids, life support, atmospheric regulators, defense shields. Within 16 minutes, Cavix Theta began choking itself to death. Doors sealed, oxygen systems reversed, nuclear cores overloaded one by one. Not a single shot fired. When the flames finally reached the council tower where Grady had died, a Terran stealth drone hovered in silence, beaming the feed directly to the war room in New Berlin. General Wren watched the tower collapse without blinking. His voice was low, almost like a prayer. Now they know what it feels like. By now, over 18 council planets were dead. Not captured, not reformed. Dead. The galaxy turned against itself in fear. Civilizations who once traded with Earth now panicked. They shut borders, declared neutrality, issued statements of solidarity. It didn't matter. Earth wasn't listening. Earth was judging. In the barracks of the TSS Furyborn, Private Keegan watched the footage in silence, his knuckles white around a combat knife. He'd grown up idolizing men like Grady, men who believed humanity deserved respect, not handouts, and they executed him like a dog. Keegan whispered to his bunkmate, "They used to laugh at us, said we were backward, violent, animals." The other soldier nodded. "Now they're the ones screaming." Keegan grinned. And the mission continued. In secret council files, now hacked by Terran Black Ops, there was a name. One alien ambassador, High Executor Threx, had been the one to issue the final death order on Grady. The files included location: a hidden moon base orbiting Darvalis, shielded by a cloaking field. Terran Spec Ops didn't hesitate. The Hellpack unit, humanity's deadliest Black Ops force, deployed within the hour. They landed without detection, cleared the base room by room. No survivors, no records left behind. They dragged Threx out from a steel vault, bleeding, gasping, shivering. He begged in 6 languages. Captain Ward didn't speak a word, just opened the airlock and threw him into vacuum. The feed went live across Earth, labeled simply, "Justice served." And the humans cheered. By week 6, the Council no longer existed. What remained were scattered planets, lawless trade ports, and broken fleets orbiting dead suns. And Earth? Earth didn't ask for forgiveness. It didn't host peace summits or rebuild ruins. It left behind monuments. On every world it destroyed, a statue stood in the ashes. A man in chains, with his eyes burning into the sky. Grady. The message was simple, carved in Terran steel. We offered peace. You offered a coffin, so we returned the favor. And the stars remembered. 3 months after the execution of Thomas Grady, the galaxy was quiet. But it wasn't peace. It was the kind of silence that settles over a mass grave. Whole sectors had gone dark. Trade routes that once hummed with diplomatic convoys and merchant fleets now stood cold and lifeless. The stars, for all their brilliance, felt dimmer. Earth's fleets didn't stop moving. They moved like an avalanche, slow, heavy, and inevitable. General Wren now operated from an orbital command citadel known only as Citadel Prime. It wasn't built for communication. It wasn't designed to host ambassadors or conduct summits. It was a war platform, armored, weaponized, and isolated. From its helm, he issued orders with machine-like clarity. And he didn't speak to aliens. He had nothing left to say. The man hadn't slept more than 4 hours a night since Grady's murder. Not because he feared war, but because he feared forgetting the weight of it. The council was gone, but the galaxy wasn't done bleeding. Splinter factions emerged, scrambling to fill the vacuum. Pirate kings, old royal bloodlines, even cults. They all thought Earth would stop now, having avenged their envoy. They misunderstood again. This wasn't revenge anymore. It was eradication of the entire system that allowed a man to be put in chains and executed for carrying a flag of peace. Humanity had decided to become the final authority. On the outer rim world of Tarvek, a rebellion began. A coalition of non-council species, mostly second-class trade partners and previously enslaved races, decided to challenge the Terran expansion. They believed Earth would hesitate to crush the oppressed. The Terran Dominion didn't. The response came from Commander Alric Kane, a brutal tactician who earned his reputation during the siege of Europa Colony. Kane didn't believe in speeches. He believed in annihilation. His orders for Tarvek were simple. Crush it. Salt the orbit. Tarvek's cities were buried under kinetic bombardments, their sky shattered by orbital railguns. Kane ordered his men to round up the rebel leaders and execute them live via orbital feed, using the same exact model of disintegration beam the Council had used on Grady. It wasn't just retaliation. It was a mirror. Humanity wanted every corner of the galaxy to feel it. The shockwave spread faster than the initial war. Empires that had once kept humanity at arm's length now begged for neutrality. Some offered gifts, technology, even slaves, thinking humanity had reverted to its early barbaric roots. General Wren rejected them all. His words, rare and direct, were broadcast on every hacked channel in known space. "We're not here to conquer. We're here to burn down the system that thought it could leash us. If you helped them, you're next. If you stayed silent, don't speak now." Even Earth's own colonies struggled to keep up. Logistics couldn't match the momentum of destruction. Terraforming fleets were still decades from reclaiming the shattered Council worlds. But that wasn't the mission. Earth didn't want those planets. Earth wanted memory, scars that would never fade. And yet, despite the fear, despite the fire, there were those who still whispered rebellion. A new faction had emerged. Quiet, decentralized, operating from rogue stations scattered across the Corin Belt. They called themselves the Restored Order, claiming to be the true heirs to the original Galactic Council Charter. Their leader? An ex-Council dignitary named Verix, one of the last to escape Earth's wrath by going underground. Verix was no fool. He knew Earth would find him eventually, so he decided to strike first. A Terran mining convoy in the Raxith system was ambushed. Civilian crew, unarmed, not military. Every last one spaced. The footage leaked to Terran networks. A message was included. The human disease must be cleansed before it spreads. That was the last mistake Verix ever made. Earth dispatched the Abyss Division, an elite shadow unit known for their psychological warfare tactics. They didn't arrive in battleships. They came in silence, one station at a time, quiet, surgical, devastating. Abyss operatives didn't just kill, they broke minds. Verix's lieutenants were found hanging in their own command centers, mouths sewn shut. One by one, the Restored Order's bases went offline. No survivors, no traces. The only thing left behind was the symbol of the Terran Dominion, a simple circle of steel, burning with crimson edges. The galaxy now understood. Humans weren't seeking a seat at the table. They'd flipped the table, slaughtered everyone seated, and set the building on fire. And still, in the ruins of it all, Earth remained cold. No leader rose with open arms. No call for peace came from the Dominion. The only message sent in the 3rd month of the Purge was a chilling 3-word signal from the Terran Central Intelligence Corps. Grady still dead. That message was intercepted by over 2,000 species. Not a single one responded. On the human side, the costs were real, but accepted. Over 90,000 Terran soldiers had died in total war. Orbital strikes gone wrong, sabotage, deep space ambushes. But they didn't come home in shame. Each one was remembered as a keeper of honor. Each funeral bore one phrase etched into their tombs. "He died because they thought we were weak." Among the dead was Private Keegan, the young soldier who once grinned at the vengeance Earth wrought. His death wasn't glorious. A rogue drone clipped his transport shuttle during a re-entry on Zalara 4. He burned up in atmosphere. But back home, his parents didn't curse the war. His father, an ex-shipyard worker, just stared at the holofeed, then whispered, "At least he died fighting for something the galaxy will never forget." Earth built no statues for politicians, no gold for diplomats. The only memorials were for soldiers, engineers, and the anonymous dead. And yet somewhere in the stillness of the void, a shift began. Not all alien species hated humanity. Some began fearing them in a way that was almost reverent. They saw how the Terrans had turned grief into steel, how they didn't just retaliate, they cleansed, and in that fear, new loyalties emerged. The Uldari, a quiet race of data harvesters, offered allegiance, not out of love, out of survival. Their emissary came to Earth wearing a shroud of submission, placing his own translator device at Earth's feet. He spoke only once. "You are the new council. You are the judgment. We will obey." Earth didn't respond with gratitude. General Wren simply said, "Get to work." And they did. The Terran Dominion didn't trust converts, but they used them. Within weeks, Uldari surveillance probes mapped every unexplored system within 400 light-years. Data flowed into Earth's war archives. Civilizations hiding in deep space were marked. Those who had ever lifted a voice in defense of the Council were flagged for extermination. The war wasn't ending. It was evolving. Earth wasn't just wiping out governments now. They were rewriting galactic history. Soon, even human soldiers began whispering about a coming final stage. Operation Final Silence. A mission so classified no one knew the details. But the rumors? They were terrifying. The goal wasn't peace, it was erasure. And at the center of it all, General Wren sat alone in Citadel Prime, watching the same 6-minute video that started it all. Thomas Grady, in chains, speaking with a voice so calm it felt like a prophecy. "Tell Earth, burn them." The words echoed in Wren's mind every night. The job wasn't finished. The galaxy hadn't bled enough yet. And Earth would make sure it did. Operation Final Silence had no anthem, no ceremony. It began in the shadows, like a quiet breath before a scream. By this point, the galaxy had accepted a new truth. Earth wasn't after control. It was after erasure. The Council had mocked Earth's primitive beginnings, its fragmented past, its bloody evolution. They called humanity undisciplined savages masked as a civilization. They executed Grady not just to kill a man, they tried to kill a symbol, one of unity, of a species that had finally found balance in its fury. And for that, humanity had decided that remembrance itself was a crime. Every library, every data archive, every historical monument related to the Council and its allied species was now a target. Earth called it cultural cleanse. The galaxy called it something worse: memory genocide. In orbit over HFY 9, a once proud planet home to the Council's largest interstellar university, Commander Avon Marsh stood aboard the TSS Titanfall, tapping his boot against the steel deck. He had orders. He just hated what those orders meant. But that didn't stop him. The university spanned a continent, with spires that pierced the clouds and vaults full of species, histories, songs, languages. Earth's intelligence had flagged it as Council Symbology Level 1. That meant no delay. Avon gave the nod. Atmospheric incinerators, deploy full. The sky turned crimson within minutes. Fires rained from orbit like vengeful angels. Students, researchers, families, everyone below screamed beneath the torrent of flame. The fires didn't just burn paper, they vaporized hard drives, core servers, even backup satellites in low orbit. 1,000 years of culture gone in 4 hours. The few survivors who did crawl out found statues of Thomas Grady already embedded in the blackened ruins. A steel face with unblinking eyes, beneath which was engraved the phrase now repeated across the stars. "Never forget what forgetting us cost you." General Wren had drawn the lines early on. This war was more than tactical. It was narrative control. The Council didn't just kill a man, they tried to erase Earth's value. So Earth erased them back, deeper, crueler. No records, no elegies, no tombstones. They would vanish from time itself. Across the shattered political remnants of the old Council, a panic surged. Those who once viewed Earth as savage now begged to preserve what little was left. The Zarnathi offered their entire species archive in exchange for mercy. They promised neutrality, trade, even reparations. Terran Command took their archives, extracted the locations of every backup, then deployed Class 5 cyclonic burners to each location. The deal was accepted. Then the Zarnathi homeworld was turned into slag. There were no second chances. Earth's most secret directive was now in full effect. Directive Lazarus. Its purpose? Replace every destroyed alien history with Terran-written versions. Lies, rewritten facts, glorified human victories. Whole civilizations now had their records altered or wiped entirely. Those who surrendered were forced to accept the Terran version of history, or watch their cities drown in fire. In the underbelly of the Orion Drift, a group of scholars formed a hidden resistance called the Keepers. They risked everything to preserve what few original Council records remained, smuggling data cores across collapsing star systems. They were betrayed by one of their own, a former Earth-born linguist who believed the future belonged only to the victors. The Keepers were found, executed, and broadcast live. The last living member, a child no older than 12, was made to watch her planet be turned to glass. Abyss operatives made sure she survived, maimed, broken, and forever a witness to what happens when memory defies Earth's decree. In secret, some Terran officers questioned the direction things were heading. Not because they doubted the mission, but because they feared what Earth was becoming. Captain Doyle, a hardened fleet veteran, wrote a personal entry that would never be seen by command. "We've gone from defenders of honor to the architects of annihilation. Grady wouldn't have wanted this, but maybe that's why he died, and why we lived." Still, Doyle gave the same orders every day. In war, morality was a currency, and Earth had already spent it all. Back home, Earth wasn't celebrating anymore. The early war parades had faded. Now there were only production quotas, resource allocation schedules, and conscription drafts. Civilian life had become functionally militarized. Children were educated with phrases like, "Galactic obedience is earned in fire, and history belongs to those who burn the past." But even among the indoctrinated, cracks formed. There were rumors. quiet, dangerous whispers of a human group called the Ashborn. Veterans, engineers, and former diplomats who believed the Dominion had gone too far. That justice had become tyranny. Their leader was a man named Braxton Hale. He'd been Grady's former squad mate during the Mars uprisings. He knew the kind of man Grady was. And he knew Grady would never have condoned memory warfare. Braxton didn't want to restore the Council. He wanted to stop the war machine Earth had become. The Ashborn struck quietly, targeting Terran memory facilities, hacking rewrite protocols, smuggling original Council histories to uncharted colonies. They weren't fighting to save aliens. They were fighting to save humanity from itself. In one infamous mission, they breached a data refinery on Phobos Omega, deleted over 200 rewritten archives, and left behind a single message in red. Grady died for peace. You became the thing he feared. Earth's response was swift. A bounty was placed on Braxton Hale's head, 5 million credits and immediate Dominion citizenship for any alien who delivered him alive. It backfired. No alien touched it. Because by now, even the terrified remnants of the galaxy knew Earth didn't want prisoners. That alive just meant slower death. General Wren saw the Ashborn not as traitors, but as weaknesses. In his eyes, Earth had earned the right to reshape the galaxy. And if a few soft-hearted humans couldn't stomach the cost, they were just another casualty. The deeper problem was, Wren was starting to believe his own myth. In his private quarters aboard Citadel Prime, he kept only one item not related to war. Thomas Grady's uniform, salvaged from the debris of Kavix Theta. Sometimes he'd stare at it in silence. Sometimes he'd hear the words Grady once told him before taking the Envoy role. You can't outburn hatred, Marcus. You can only outlive it. But now Wren was hatred. And the galaxy wasn't just burning, it was disappearing. And yet, something was shifting. Earth's AI overseers began detecting strange signal patterns from deep space, regions far beyond the Council's known borders. Unregistered energy signatures, fleet-level mass movements, encrypted languages that didn't match any known record. The galaxy was reacting. Something was coming, something old, something forgotten even by the Council. And it was watching Earth's cleansing with silence. No interference, no signals, just waiting. Back on Earth, the Defense Corps interpreted the signals as a possible emerging threat. Preparations began. New fleets commissioned. Dark energy weapons developed. Humanity, it seemed, wasn't done making enemies, but this time it might have poked something it couldn't burn. General Wren didn't care. To him, they were just more names on a list. The war wasn't over. The silence hadn't fallen yet. They called it the Veil. At first, the Terran Dominion thought it was just another data anomaly, a cluster of dead stars and fractured wormholes beyond the Zexian expanse. No known records, no confirmed species, no signals. But the AI network disagreed. The Dominion's data grid, overseen by a semi-sentient intelligence called Redline, had noticed patterns, symmetry in the darkness. It wasn't randomness, it was structure, vast, ancient structure buried in gravitational chaos. And it was waking up. The first sign came during Operation Emberfall, when a Terran scout fleet entered what they believed was an uninhabited region for cultural cleansing. The target was an old mining planet, once loyal to the Council, now abandoned. But the ships never returned. No explosion, no distress signal. Just complete, total silence. 27 vessels. Gone. Redline tried to decode the event. It failed. That was unprecedented. The Dominion's AI didn't fail. It controlled, but not here. General Wren was briefed within the hour. His reaction was simple, expected. Send more. This time 2 battlecruisers, 1 dreadnought, and a stealth command ship entered the region known only on Dominion charts as Sector Null. They, too, vanished. Redline's models began to fracture. Predictive nodes couldn't chart movement inside Sector Null. Gravity distorted. Signal paths curved in on themselves. Even time signatures started to break down. The AI called it Event Horizon Unknown. And then, for the first time in the campaign, Earth hesitated. Not out of fear, out of unfamiliarity. Earth feared nothing that bled, nothing that could scream. But this didn't scream. It watched. Back on Citadel Prime, Ren stood alone in the War Dome, surrounded by holograms of the known galaxy, most of it scorched or conquered. His generals waited for orders. They assumed this was just another problem to burn through. But Ren wasn't speaking. He was remembering. During one of Grady's early missions, he'd spoken of an old alien myth, a race older than stars, not gods, not machines, something in between. He called them the Silents. "Every galaxy needs its Grim Reaper," Grady once joked. "This one just hides better than most." Now Ren wasn't laughing. He issued the command, Operation Blindhammer, the largest data mining offensive in Dominion history. Every AI, every listening post, every spy probe in the galaxy was redirected toward one task: find what lies beyond Sector Null. Within days, fragments came in. Ancient council records, long deleted or erased, hidden in black archives, and buried deep inside isolated satellites. The pieces told a story. A long time ago, before the Council, before humanity, there was a collapse. Not a war, not a plague, a purge, entire species gone in weeks, not killed, not enslaved, unwritten, as if they never existed. The few who survived never described battles or armies, just silence. The Council had known. They had created the Galactic Charter, not to govern, but to distract, to keep civilizations busy, disarmed, compliant, not to protect them from each other, but from what was sleeping beyond the veil. When Grady entered the Council, he was unknowingly treading near that ancient secret. And perhaps, just perhaps, that was why they killed him. Not out of offense, out of fear, because humans don't comply, humans don't forget, humans fight back. And if Earth had found the truth, it would challenge the silence itself. Now Earth was marching toward it. Ren called together the Dominion High Council, rarely used, summoned only once before during the Solar Rebellion. By the end, only Ren remained standing. He'd declared what no one else dared to say. Sector Null is watching. So we watch it back. If this galaxy has gods, they bleed like the rest. The decision was made. Operation Godbreak. Build a fleet. Not for war, but for confrontation with the unknown. The Leviathan Protocol was activated, constructing 10 Black-class megaships powered by quantum-dense reactors, built in secret in the Jupiter Forge Yards. Ships designed to defy gravity, time, even logic. It would take time. Years, maybe. But Earth had waited once. It could wait again. Meanwhile, across the broken remains of alien space, old factions began stirring. Some in fear, others in opportunity. The survivors of the Zarnathi massacre, few and scattered, began contacting the Ashborn, Earth's internal resistance. They offered data, warnings, secrets the Council had buried. Braxton Hale, now hidden deep inside an asteroid cluster, received one message in particular that changed everything. A symbol, not language, not math, just a shape, an eye, black, endless, open. The last file ended with one phrase: Do not wake the listener. Braxton knew then. It was never about Earth's vengeance. It was about what that vengeance would wake up. He sent a desperate, encrypted message to Citadel Prime. A plea. Stop! Before it sees us all! It was intercepted, never reached Wren. Instead, Redline decoded the symbol, analyzed it, and crashed. The entire Terran data grid, the most advanced AI civilization ever built, went dark for 11 minutes. When it came back online, it issued one message across every screen, every satellite, every fleet. We are not alone. Panic spread in whispers. Then came the first sighting. Outpost 4199, a deep space Dominion monitoring station orbiting a black dwarf, sent an emergency burst signal. Its last message. We looked at the stars. Something looked back. The station was torn apart in seconds. The debris was clean. No heat damage. No explosion. Just gone. General Wren reviewed the footage. There was no enemy ship, no weapon discharge, just static. And then, on frame 8829, something moved. A shadow. Not behind the stars, between them. Wren closed the feed. His face, normally hard as obsidian, cracked just slightly. Build the Leviathans faster, he ordered. Because now he knew. Earth wasn't the top predator anymore. And vengeance had a price. The Leviathan-class warships were still under construction, their massive frames skeletal in the orbit of Jupiter's gas-slicked shadow. Engineers worked in 72-hour rotations, powered by stimulants and desperation. The fear wasn't about alien fleets or rebellion anymore. It was the unknown. The thing watching. They called it a shadow out of lack of vocabulary, but it was more than absence. It was a presence that hollowed light, bent reality, unmade logic. Even Earth's most powerful AI systems could only whisper incomplete definitions before melting down or shutting off entirely. Across Earth, a new tension emerged. Not panic. Humans didn't panic anymore. But unease. Even the war-hardened eyes of Dominion officers began to dull. There was no pride in burning planets if something bigger was watching. General Wren stood on the observation deck of Citadel Prime, arms behind his back, staring out into space. He hadn't spoken in over 20 minutes, not to aides, not to advisors. Just stared. Behind him, Admiral Vell tried again. Sir, the Ashborn have offered cooperation. They're moving relics, ancient council data. They claim the symbol matches silence records. We can't ignore this. Wren's response was slow, almost absent. If this thing's real, we don't ask questions. We prepare to kill it. Vell nodded, but something in her face cracked. The unshakable confidence Earth had wielded like a hammer was fracturing. 3 more Dominion outposts went dark that week. No alerts, no final words, just gone. Satellites surrounding the regions registered momentary data loss, not deletion, reversal. It was as if those places had never existed. Space warped in on itself, folding like a page in a book. And when it straightened again, nothing remained. The veil wasn't attacking. It was editing. Humanity had always relied on brute strength, on clever tactics, on war machines. But you can't outflank a god that doesn't bleed. Still, Earth didn't back down. Construction of the first Leviathan ship, TSS Judicator, was finished in record time. The hull stretched longer than New York. Its engines were powered by collapsed singularities. Every inch of its design was based on one principle: survive the impossible. Wren visited it personally, touched its hull, whispered the name Grady under his breath. Because this ship wasn't for conquest. It was for legacy. He gave the green light. The Judicator would enter Sector Null, not to fight. to look. Every Dominion eye turned toward the feed as the ship crossed the event boundary. Static flooded the screen for 40 seconds. Then it came back. A flicker. Then blackness again, but not silence. The audio returned. It was breathing. Not mechanical, not digital. Breathing. Then a voice. Not loud, not angry, just tired. You killed the noise. Now you've invited the quiet. Then nothing. The crew of the Judicator? Gone. Not dead. Just missing. Autopilot systems returned the vessel. Every corridor was empty. No blood, no trace, just one word written in human handwriting on the command wall. Sleep. That broke something inside the Dominion. Suddenly, everything they'd done, burning planets, rewriting history, erasing cultures, felt childish. A tantrum in front of a slumbering god. But they'd already screamed too loud. The Veil was listening now. Back on Earth, cities dimmed their lights. Broadcasts were shortened. Even propaganda stations toned down their rhetoric. Not from regret, from strategy. Maybe, just maybe, they could make the galaxy quiet again. Maybe it wasn't too late. But the damage was done. Because Earth wasn't alone in its defiance. Other civilizations, small, forgotten races once hidden from Council and Terran control, began to rise. Not with weapons, with worship. They saw the Veil not as a threat, but a reckoning. Entire cults formed overnight, temples carved into asteroids, sacrifices, rituals. They called the shadow the Listener, and they believed Earth had summoned it. The Ashborn tried to warn humanity. They reached out again and again, begging for communication. Braxton Hale sent a final encrypted message to General Wren himself. "We can't kill what isn't alive. Stop pushing, listen, or we all vanish." "This time," Wren responded, "meet me." That was the first sign of fracture in Dominion unity. The meeting took place in the ruins of Kavix Theta, where Grady had been executed. Braxton arrived with 5 Ashborn lieutenants. Wren came alone. No weapons were drawn, just old soldiers standing in the ashes of a war gone too far. Braxton spoke first. "Grady died for peace. You've turned him into a symbol of silence." Wren didn't flinch. "He died with his eyes open. Maybe we should too." They stood there for a long time. No cameras, no broadcasts. Then, for the first time since the purge began, an order was given not to fire. Earth's fleets paused. Not out of surrender, but realization. They had won the war. But something else was winning the silence. And maybe, just maybe, the only way to survive wasn't to scream louder, but to listen back. The pause was not peace. Earth's fleets stopped firing, but their engines never powered down. Troops remained deployed, drones still monitored skies, and Leviathan-class ships stayed aimed at stars like loaded barrels. But for the first time in 4 months, the Dominion wasn't expanding. It was listening. General Wren's private meeting with Braxton Hale had shaken something loose. Not from his pride, but from his certainty. Wren had built his career on control, clarity, purpose. And now, after burning half a galaxy, he stood in the ruins of Kavix Theta, staring at the ghost of a man whose death still echoed louder than every orbital strike combined. Grady had died chained, but he'd spoken freely. Now Earth was free, but the words were chains. Back aboard Citadel Prime, the atmosphere changed. Redline's predictive modules now refused to render forecasts beyond 90 days. The AI, once ruthlessly confident, began recommending only low-interference survival strategies. It had never used that word before. Survival. In the classified rooms beneath the War Dome, Project Echofire was activated, a secret council of ex-council scientists, Ashborn defectors, rogue Terran scholars, and even one alien defector, a Lyrathi code singer named Elnvareth. They weren't warriors. They were truth diggers. And what they found scared even Redline. The Council had known. Deep in their earliest charters, a secret doctrine had existed, the Containment Clause. It referred not to war or rebellion, but to narrative isolation. Civilizations were to be kept in cultural stasis, not to control power, but to suppress curiosity, because in their earliest deep space expeditions, long before Earth's name even echoed through the void, the Council had uncovered monolithic structures near what would one day be called Sector Null. These weren't ruins. They were warnings, thousands of them, scattered across dead planets and lifeless systems, all identical. No language, no carvings, just the same three features: a hollow eye, an outstretched hand, and an inverted spiral. All buried deep beneath planetary crusts, as if the worlds themselves had tried to forget. When the Council realized these structures were not decaying, but self-preserving, they enacted the Containment Clause. No colonization beyond the Veil, no research, no awakening. But over time, as politics replaced fear, the knowledge faded. And now Earth had not only poked the Veil, it had screamed into it. The listener had stirred, and the universe shifted. Reports flooded in from species thought extinct, awakened from stasis, roused by gravitational anomalies, drawn toward the same thing. The Eye, the Judicator ship, still docked at Luna Black Port, now pulsed with strange energy signatures. Its hull, once silent, began to hum. It wasn't noise. It was vibration, frequency. It was responding. Earth scrambled. Scientists tested for AI hacks, EMP contamination. Nothing, until they discovered the markings. Along the inside of the Judicator's core walls, human crew names once engraved as memorials had been rearranged, shifted into circular formations. Each circle had a central point. Grady, his name was always at the center. Earth didn't understand it. But the Veil did. Grady had died as a symbol. Now he was being framed as a nexus, a convergence of fate. Braxton warned them again. This isn't revenge anymore. This is rewriting. Something's pulling history into itself, turning it around. Every strike we made, every world we erased, it's all forming a loop. Wren listened now, not because he feared Braxton, but because fear no longer had form. It was everything. They called it convergence theory. Every act of human defiance, every moment of vengeance, it wasn't just memory, it was magnetism. The listener didn't create destruction. It followed it, and Earth had drawn a map. Still, there was division. Inside the Dominion, voices rose, some calling to finish the war, to wipe out every last trace of the old council before the listener could awaken further. Others, Ashborn sympathizers, rogue officers, defectors, pleaded for a new strategy, containment again. But voluntary this time, not silence from fear, silence from respect. It came to a vote in the core military assembly, the closest thing Earth had left to a unified voice. The vote was split. Wren held the tiebreaker. And he didn't vote. Instead, he left the assembly chamber, walked into his private war archive, and activated a file no one had touched since Grady's execution. Protocol atonement. It was never meant to be used. It had been written by Grady himself years before. A theoretical failsafe in case Earth ever became the villain. Its contents were simple. If we ever become the hammer that breaks too much, leave behind the blueprint of what we destroyed, someone else might need to rebuild it. Grady had secretly encoded full data records of every Council civilization Earth had wiped. Not to preserve them for Earth. To preserve them from Earth. Wren read the file. All of it. And then he activated the upload beacon. Across Earth's own destroyed sectors, data cores began deploying. Not weapons, not orders. Records, the truth, unfiltered, raw, shameful, every crime, every purge, every extinction, released to the galaxy, humanity's own confession, and the listener responded. Not with death, but with presence. At the edge of known space, the stars folded, not exploded, bent inward, creating a tunnel of unlight. And through it came the eye, not a ship, not a being, just awareness. For the first time, every human on Earth, in colonies, on warships, felt it. An emotion, not anger, not hate, just disappointment. And a question, not spoken in words, but burned into every living mind. Are you done yet? Wren stood in the war dome, alone, and whispered his answer. Yes. The question haunted every living soul across the Terran Dominion. Are you done yet? It wasn't a warning. It wasn't a threat. It was the last breath before judgment. On Earth, silence reigned. Not the artificial silence of speechlessness or broken communication, but the kind of silence that settles when a funeral procession walks past your door and you know the casket holds your name. General Wren hadn't spoken publicly since the Eye appeared. Not to the Defense Corps, not to the fleet commanders, not even to Redline, whose own AI subsystems had locked themselves into isolation loops, trying to avoid observational contamination. The AI was afraid. Redline feared erasure. Humans feared truth. For the first time in recorded history, the entire Dominion experienced global synchronization. Thoughts aligned, behaviors subdued, cities stilled, as if all of Earth's instincts knew the next move might be its last. Across Luna, Titan, Ganymede, and Earth's surface, children stopped asking why the war had started. They started asking if it had ever really mattered. And still the Eye remained, unblinking, unmoving, as if waiting for an answer that Earth couldn't give through missiles or monuments, only through action. General Wren walked through the ruined halls of what was once the Unity Archive, the massive library that had housed the Terran Dominion's rewritten history of the galaxy. It had been designed as a monument to dominance, to declare Earth's supremacy over truth itself. He ordered it burned, not bombed, burned with matches. By hand. Thousands of soldiers, once executioners of the Purge campaigns, stood shoulder to shoulder tossing volumes of edited history, artificial culture implants, and propaganda reels into the roaring fire. No cheering, no ceremony, just crackling flames and shame. On a warship hovering over the wastelands of Cavix Theta, Braxton Hale watched the inferno from orbit and muttered, "It took the void looking back for us to look at ourselves." Beside him, Ellen Vareth, the Liarathi defector, said nothing. Her kind communicated best in silence. That silence now spoke louder than words. On the 7th day after the Eye's arrival, Earth did the unthinkable. It powered down its fleets, not docked, not rerouted, powered down. Massive dreadnoughts floated lifeless in orbit. Mechs kneeled in empty deserts. Satellites deactivated one by one. It was the single greatest gesture of submission humanity had ever made. Not because it was asked, but because it was understood. A message was sent. Not from Redline, not from Wren, but from Earth's oldest surviving station. The orbital beacon Grady had helped build during the first attempt at peace years ago. The message was short. One word in every language, dead and living. Enough. Then the eye moved. Not closer, not forward. Down. It entered the system, warping gravity in its path. Moons cracked, oceans boiled in anti-tide, but nothing was destroyed. It descended. The first to see it emerge were children on the outskirts of Johannesburg. They didn't scream, they pointed. One of them whispered, "It's looking at us." And then it stopped. Not in the atmosphere. Not above the ground, between moments. Time fractured slightly. Wind paused. The sun dimmed without darkening. And then every human saw the same thing, all at once. Not a vision, not a memory, a mirror. They stood in a world that wasn't a world. Just blackness reflecting back only their regrets. Every soldier saw the cities they burned. Every commander saw the lies they told. Every citizen saw the silence they accepted. And General Wren saw Thomas Grady, chained again. But this time, the chains were of Earth's own making. Grady didn't speak. He only looked at Wren and mouthed a single word. Now. In that moment, humanity faced its choice. Not survival. Definition. Who were they? The species that struck back? Or the one that stepped down? Back aboard Citadel Prime, General Wren stood before the galaxy's last command console. Redline's voice, fractured but functional, echoed beside him. Awaiting directive. Wren typed 3 letters into the terminal. A TN atonement. It triggered the final failsafe Grady had hidden inside Protocol Atonement. A full upload of pre-war archives to all species, encrypted only by morality. No censorship, no glory, just truth. And a virus. One last virus. Not to destroy systems, to disable lies. Across the galaxy, rewritten histories crumbled. Dominion monuments melted in place. Propaganda networks collapsed mid-broadcast, replaced by raw footage of massacres, of diplomacy refused, of Grady standing alone before the council. And then his final words. Tell Earth, burn them. Followed by Wren's voice, overlaid, we burned too much. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't an apology. It was admission. The eye rose, not violently, gracefully, and then it folded, not into light, not into space, into absence, as if it had never come, as if it had only waited to see if Earth could understand. It was gone, but not forgotten, because the silence remained. Not fearful, not oppressive, peaceful. Across Earth, the flame had gone out, not because it was snuffed, because it was done. War was over, but scars remained. The Ashborn disbanded. The fleets dissolved. The Leviathan ships were buried in orbit, left as monuments to human arrogance. And Thomas Grady? Statues were never built again. Instead, a single garden was grown at the site of his execution. No walls, no names, just silence, where children now played. And once every year, across the stars, humans everywhere paused, not to grieve, but to remember. Because history doesn't belong to the victors. It belongs to those who don't forget.